Chapter 1505, Lianya's hatred. Feng Lianqing closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Big brother Feng, I won't become a concubine, and I won't do something like stealing another person's love. My biological father was seduced away by a witch, and he abandoned my mother and me. He was even deluded by that witch and announced that he would kill my mother and me. My mother was only able to continue living by his side because of my grandfather's protection. But, Lianya's face was covered in tears as she continued sorrowfully, but I was constantly abused by him and that witch at home, so my mother sent me away. The general just happened to pass by and took pity on me, which was why he had brought me back. All these years, he knew that I now belong to General Manor and have a relatively high position here, so he wouldn't bully my mother. If I lost General Manor's protection, my mother and I would both lose our lives. I beg you, Big brother Feng. Please don't tell the general, I beg you. All these years, she had feigned obedience before the general to finally gain his trust after much difficulty. Even if she was different from Big brother Feng because she did not have the talent to become his disciple, the people in General Manor treated her like a young miss. The general too, treated her like she was his granddaughter. However, the general had never allowed even a speck of dust in his eyes. If he knew that she had done such a thing, he would definitely be furious and chase her out of General Manor. Feng Lianqing was not moved and kept his back facing the girl. Lianyi looked up with pitiful eyes. The general is a righteous person. He would never tolerate such a thing even if it was his biological granddaughter. So, if he finds out, I won't be able to stay here anymore. Big brother Feng, seeing as how we grew up together, please don't tell him. Feng Lianqing laughed coldly. Even if I don't tell, do you think His Highness would keep quiet? Lianyi shuddered as fear filled her eyes. Me for extra chapters. Feng Lianqing continued to laugh coldly. Moreover, the Empress was enraged. It was His Highness who had said he wanted to wait for Master to return so they could discuss this. Otherwise, the Empress would have been here by now. Lianya's body went limp as she fell, paralyzed to the ground. Her eyes were filled with fear as she asked, but I have only made this mistake because of you. I did this for you. You can't leave me like this, Big brother Feng. Feng Lianqing closed his eyes in pain. After a long while, he opened his eyes. Yes, you only did this to absolve me. Hence, I will go to Miss Feng later and apologize. You better go and beg for her forgiveness as well. One other thing, since this incident happened because of me, I will shoulder this responsibility. When Master returns, I will tell him myself. He and Lianyi had both grown up under the general's care, but why had Lianyi become so frightening? She was even worse than Helianyu. Helianyu was only rotten on the surface. She would never stab someone in the back or tell lies to frame someone else. She would, at most, lecture the people she did not like. But Lianyi. On the surface, she was kind, gentle, and loyal. But in truth, she was devious, selfish, and a fiend. Lianyi, I finally understand why between you and Helianyu, Master prefers Helianyu. Before he left, Feng Lianqing paused again and smirked. Perhaps Master has already noticed something, but he finds you pitiful, and since you've never actually done anything wrong, he just kept you around. Chapter 1506, Lianya's hatred. 3. Even if it were the cat, his master would still care for it since he raised it for so many years. Let alone a human. Even if his master found something strange in the end, he would still keep Lianyi with him. After all these years, how could he kick her out? His master liked to say some harsh words, but in reality, he was a soft-hearted person. As long as one did not commit a big crime, he would not drive that person away. Feng Lianqing sighed lightly and said no more. He did not even look at Lianyi again and slowly walked toward the door. After Feng Lianqing had left, Lianyi sat on the ground in despair. No. I can't just sit here and wait for it to happen. I can't leave the General Manor. Lianya's eyes sank as she slowly stood up from the ground. No matter what, she needed to settle this matter before Tianya returned. Tianya had always liked Helianyu, and if she could make Helianyu take her side, perhaps there was still hope for her. Lieni suddenly felt pathetic. She was the first person Tianya had brought back, but in the end, she still needed to rely on the woman she once despised the most to stay in this manner. However, there was no other way for her. In front of the inn, Feng Lianqing stood straight-backed under the light breeze, looking a little worried. Was Maiden Feng going to this inn just now? Yes, master. Well, Feng Lianqing was a little hesitant, but he ended up taking a step into the inn. From a distance, he saw the two people sitting in the corner of the inn. The young girl still had a smile on her face, and the domineering frown between her eyebrows always gave Feng Lianqing a sense of familiarity. The man sitting next to her smiled faintly as his eyes were fixed upon Feng Ruqing. Me for extra chapters. It was truly a lovely couple. Feng Lianqing did not know what was wrong with him, but he just could not stand to see people showing affection in front of him. He always felt that these people were deliberately mocking him, a single guy. Maiden Feng, Master Nan Xian, Feng Lianqing regained his senses and walked toward Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian smilingly. Feng Ruqing glanced at him. Do you think a pregnant woman like me can still be called maiden? The corner of Feng Lianqing's mouth twitched. Lady Nan. Feng Ruqing's facial expression returned to its initial state. What do you want from us? Perhaps it was because of Lieni, she was even a bit cold toward Feng Lianqing, and she had to stay in this place to investigate Liani's background. Lady Nan, I've come to apologize, Feng Lianqing smiled bitterly. I didn't expect Lieni to do such a thing, causing the Emperor and the Empress to misunderstand Lady Nan. This is my fault, Lady Nan. He paused and slowly closed his eyes for a moment. Can you forgive Lieni and me? In the end, his heart softened. Even with a dog, after living together for a long time, it would be a little hard to let it go. Let alone a human. But he would only give Lieni this one chance. This time, he had come to plead for her. But if it happened again, he would not only stop caring about her but would also personally kick her out. Oh, Feng Ruqing glanced at Feng Lianqing. I'm not someone who holds grudges. Of course, I won't be angry with you, but as for Lieni, I won't forgive her. This matter had nothing to do with Feng Lianqing, so she held no grudge against him, but Chapter 1507. She also did not want to have any connection with Feng Lianqing. If there's nothing else, can you please leave now? Don't interrupt Nan Xian and me. Feng Ruqing supported her chin with her hand and looked at Nan Xian. Well, it was still her Nan Xian who looked beautiful, the other men. They would only affect her appetite. Nan Xian picked a slice of meat using his chopsticks and put it inside Feng Ruqing's bowl. Qing'er, the food is getting cold, you should eat it now. All right. Feng Ruqing smiled and ignored Feng Lianqing. The only person left in her eyes was Nan Xian. Once again, the corner of Feng Lianqing's mouth twitched again. Lady Nan, we have experienced life and death together in the Spirit Beast Mountain. Why are you so cold to me? I thought we would become friends after that journey. Feng Ruqing turned and looked at Feng Lianqing. Lieni made a mistake, I won't hold it against you, but do you think we can be friends after all this? Feng Lianqing was slightly stunned. Somehow, after hearing the girl's words, he felt a little uncomfortable. It was as if he had lost something forever. I'm sorry. Lieni and I grew up together. I couldn't leave her alone. That's all I could do for her. Well, I understand you, but it doesn't mean I can accept your apology. Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. So, we can't be friends, and we will never be friends. She always held grudges. Lieni had accused her of something she did not do, so would she forgive Lieni? And just because she did not hate Feng Lianqing did not mean that she could accept him as her friend. Because Feng Lianqing. After all, he and Lieni were still friends. Of course, Feng Ruqing would not agree to become his friend. Feng Ruqing wanted to get close to Lianyi, and she had this purpose in mind from the beginning. However, after this incident, she was unwilling to force herself to do so. Getting close to Lianyi was not the only way to find out her background. There must be other methods. Me for extra chapters. Lady Nan, I know that you are unwilling to forgive Lianyi. Feng Lianking's heart was filled with bitterness. But I cannot ignore her. I will report this matter to Lady, but if Lady Nan forgives Lianyi, she will not be driven out. And if she's driven out, she'll definitely end up in a miserable state. Feng Ruqing stared at Feng Lianqing for a few seconds and chuckled, it has nothing to do with me. I won't go looking for her, but I won't forgive her. Nan Xian, kick him out. I don't want to see him again. All right. Nan Xian glanced at Feng Lianqing coldly. He then waved his sleeve, and a gust of wind blew, sending Feng Lianqing flying back outside and falling onto the street in a heap. Fortunately, there were not many people in Wushang City today because of the spirit beast's attack just now. He climbed up from the ground, stared at the inn, and smiled bitterly. This is not what I wanted. He initially wanted to apologize but ended up pleading for Lianyi's mercy. Lianyi had framed Feng Ruqing. One with a little temper would also feel hard to forgive her. Feng Lianqing gave a final glance at them before turning around and headed to the general manor. After Feng Lianqing had left, Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian went back to their room on the second floor of the inn to rest after dinner. Chapter 1508, Lianyi's Hatred v. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before there was another unwelcome guest. Nan Xian's face was cold. His eyes seemed murderous as he stared at the woman standing at the door. The woman was dressed in bright yellow, appearing somewhat graceful, noble, and elegant. She walked in unceremoniously, sat in front of Feng Ruqing, and poured herself a teacup. Feng Ruqing was stunned. This tea should be from the inn. Later I will send someone to bring you some good tea, the Empress smiled faintly. Maiden Feng, this matter is indeed my fault. Yuer is innocent. Feng Ruqing's face darkened. Which eye of yours saw that I am still a maiden? Call me Lady Nan. Can't you even see that I'm already pregnant? Nan Xian pulled Feng Ruqing into his arms and glanced coldly at the Empress. His white robe fluttered under the cold moonlight. His expression expressed slight dissatisfaction. The Empress looked a little awkward. Lady Nan, Yuer wants to see you. Oh, Feng Ruqing was somewhat dazed. She did not have any bad feelings toward that little prince. He was just a spoiled child, and he was not really bad, not to the extent of that kind of evil. He was only arrogant, and that was not a big problem. As long as he was no longer so overbearing in front of her, it was enough. I'm busy. Feng Ruqing responded smilingly. Qing'er is not free. Nan Xian looked at the young girl compassionately for a while. We're busy making babies, and we don't have time to deal with unwelcome guests. The queen's face stiffened. Her gaze subconsciously fell on Feng Ruqing's abdomen. Isn't she already pregnant? It doesn't prevent us from continuing to do what we want to do. It was not really about making babies, it was about the process. Of course, since Feng Ruqing already had a baby in her belly, he did not dare to be too rough because it might harm the child in her belly. Me for extra chapters. Lady Nan, the Empress smiled bitterly. I've never seen Yuer so attached to someone before. Feng Ruqing raised her head to look at the Empress. That little fatty seemed to be afraid of her. But perhaps that boy was interested in her spirit beast. That was why he was so clingy. Actually, Yuer's health isn't very good. He was so playful and wasn't be able to cultivate, the Empress said a little helplessly. He was bullied when I wasn't around, and for that reason, I felt a bit more sorry for him. It is true that I have deliberately pampered him. Feng Ruqing did not reply. Nan Xian had already poured a cup of tea for her and placed it in front of her. She gently took a sip, her eyes drooping, listening silently. I'm afraid that he'd be bullied if he was too gentle. I want to make him fierce and powerful so that no one will bully him. After all, I can't be there for him all the time. This was the first time the Empress had talked to anyone about these matters, and she had even used a rare tone that made her look more approachable than usual. Of course, this approachability was only for the people of Wushang City. In Feng Ruking's eyes, the Empress was no different from ordinary people. But I never thought that he would be raised like this by me, nor did I consider whether I would harm him by doing so. The Empress smiled. Today, Lady Nan's words did wake me up, and I went back to think about it for a long time before I finally found out that what I have been doing was wrong. Chapter 1509. Feng Ruqing raised her eyebrows. It seemed that the Empress was not as stupid as she thought. Lady Nan, your is my life. I risked my life to give birth to him. It was my fault. I was too careless back then when I was pregnant and was poisoned, causing his veins to clog up, preventing him from cultivating, so I still feel guilty about it. If she had been careful enough back then, she would not have dragged her son down. Her carelessness had brought out such consequences. How could she not feel sorry for Yuer? I lost my mind, and I was so angry when Lieni told me that something had happened to Yuer. He's my life. Whoever touched my life, I would fight her to the death. The Emperor and I were so emotional at that time, allowing Lieni to take advantage of us, that we have almost harmed Lady Nan. The Empress was so mad back then because she was overwhelmed by anger. But only after she had calmed down that her mind could finally think clearly. Fortunately, she was not the type of person who was hard on admitting her mistakes, and since this matter was indeed their fault, she had to admit it. I can understand. Feng Ruqing took a sip of tea. If I were in danger, my parents and the others would go mad too. Besides, that little fatty is still young, so if you teach him well, there is still a chance that you can correct his behavior. The Empress' eyes showed signs of worry at the mention of this. Lady Nan, I came to find you just for this matter. Feng Ruqing looked at the Empress suspiciously. Me? That's right, Yuer is spoiled by me and doesn't listen to me at all. I think he's very obedient to Lady Nan. I wonder if Lady Nan... Can you discipline him appropriately for me? Feng Ruqing was silent for a moment. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm afraid that it'll be too fierce, and it will affect the child in my belly. The Empress was somewhat confused and did not understand what Feng Ruqing was saying. She was silent for a few moments and asked, Maiden Feng, what do you mean by that? Well, I'm so gentle now, and my daughter will definitely like me as her mother. But if I'm too fierce, what if she gets scared and runs away, and I give birth to a son? One for the sake of her daughter, she would not even bother with this nonsense. The Empress was somewhat stunned. It was the first time that she had heard this kind of talk. She looked at Feng Ruqing, confused. So, you're in charge of your own child, don't come to me. Feng Ruqing yawned languidly. I'm sleepy. Nan Xian looked at the Empress coldly and gave her a warning glance. Me for extra chapters. When the Empress saw that Feng Ruqing was indeed a bit tired, she did not plan on staying longer, so she stood up helplessly. I'll leave then, but I'll come back to you later. She had already stood up after saying this and walked out of the inn. Feng Ruqing yawned again, and her body slowly rested on Nan Xian's chest. Nan Xian raised his hand and gently pulled the young girl into his arms. Let's rest first if you're tired. All right, Feng Ruqing smiled. Hearing Feng Ruqing's words, Nan Xian carried her and laid her down on bed carefully before covering her with a quilt. His movements were very gentle, afraid that he would accidentally injure the child in her womb. Moonlight poured through the window and landed on the man's face. His handsome face looked so gentle, no longer as cold as usual. Early morning. Chapter 15:10 General Manor. As soon as Feng Lianqing walked out of the manor, he saw a familiar figure in front of him. He frowned and wanted to leave fast. Brother Feng. A soft call from Lieni made him stop in his tracks. He turned to the woman who was slowly walking toward him. What can I do for you? He was cold, so cold that it made Liania's heart tremble. She and Feng Lianqing were childhood sweethearts and had grown up together, but now, the person she always called brother was treating her so cold just for a woman. Moreover, that woman was married. Brother Feng, I thought a lot about it yesterday, and I know I was wrong. Lieni endured the pain in her heart and smiled faintly. Her eyes were filled with guilt as she said, I admit that I was in love with Master Nan Xian. Feng Lianqing was startled. He had not expected Lieni to admit it, which was a bit impressive. He turned back, his gaze falling on the woman in front of him, and frowned. He already has a wife. Lieni smiled bitterly. I know. I'm not the kind of person who would cross the line just because of love. I admit that I liked him, but I've always kept it in my heart. And I admit that I held a grudge against Feng Ruqing because she embarrassed me. Feng Lianqing's eyes were cold and heavy. She didn't hurt you, but you still blamed her. So, I finally understand, Lieni smiled bitterly. I was the one who had almost harmed her, but that wasn't my intention. When I went to the palace, the emperor asked me why the little prince was taken by a leopard. I panicked, and I didn't want anything to happen to Brother Feng, so I thought of Feng Ruqing. Brother Feng, it was my fault. I know I was wrong. Lieni pulled Feng Lianqing's sleeve as her face was already soaked with tears. When master returns, I'm ready to be punished. I beg you not to drive me out. As long as I'm allowed to stay in the general's manor, I'm willing to accept any punishment, me for extra chapters. Feng Lianqing looked at Liania's face, his heart softened, and he sighed softly. I will plead for you, but after all, master is the one who will make the final decision. Lieni smiled. Her smile was filled with gratitude. Thank you, Brother Feng. Master will forgive me for your sake. I know I was wrong, so don't worry, what doesn't belong to me, isn't mine. I understand that. It's good that you understand. After all, he had always treated Lieni as his sister, so he would be happy if she wanted to change for the better. And make sure you go apologize to Maiden Feng. You must wait until she forgives you. I will meet the emperor and speak for you. We have to wait for master to return before making any decision. Liania's body stiffened slightly. She clenched her fists tightly, and a dark glint flashed in her eyes. Only after a moment did she raise her eyes and smiled. All right, Brother Feng. Don't worry, I will ask for her forgiveness. If she doesn't forgive me, I will kneel until she forgives me. Feng Lianqing was slightly startled. He looked at Liania's smile with some bitterness. In the end, he did not say another word and turned around to leave. Lieni stared at Feng Lianqing's back for a long time, unable to return to her senses. Chapter 15:11, Liania's hatred 8, Maiden. A servant stood behind Lieni, somewhat dissatisfied. Master is also a member of the general's family, why is he speaking for another woman? Enough. Liania's face was pale, and her voice was cold. General has always been fair, and Brother Feng is only doing it for the general manor's reputation. After all, I was at fault for this matter, so I should have gone to apologize. The servant looked dissatisfied, clearly feeling aggrieved on Liania's behalf. Everyone else will protect their own family members, but in the general manor. Master still chooses to protect an outsider. And don't you dare to say anything in front of Brother Feng. He will be angry. Lieni raised her eyes, expressionlessly. I live in the general's manor, but general and I. After all, we're not master and disciple. The only ones who can really make decisions in this manner are the general and Brother Feng. She meant nothing. Maiden, general usually treats you extremely well. Even if he didn't take you as a disciple, he still treats you as a family member. And people knew you as the young lady of General Manor. Who did not know that the general really liked little girls? He liked the Hellion families Hellion Yu and Lieni. There were no other young ladies in the general manor. Maiden Lieni was the only one. But am not his relative after all. Lieni smiled bitterly and shook her head. Besides, even if his own granddaughter made a mistake, he would not show mercy, let alone me. Forget it. So what if I accepted the loss? I'll do it as long as I can remain in the general manor. The servant twisted her handkerchief tighter. She wanted to convince Lieni but did not know how to begin. Moreover, that woman is so beautiful. Otherwise, Brother Feng wouldn't have spoken up for her. And her husband wouldn't have just stood by, watching her hook up with everyone and still did not abandon her, Lieni said faintly as she started to leave. The servant was unaware with a smile on Liania's face as she walked past her. The servant was somewhat stunned, and she did not feel sympathy for Lieni. No wonder Master Lianqing is so helpful to that girl, she's really too foxy, and Master Lianqing is smitten with her. Me for extra chapters. The moment the servant was about to turn around, a voice suddenly came from behind her, causing her to stop abruptly. Hey, you! Stop! The maid trembled in fear as she turned back and saw Hellion Yu was heading in her direction. The young girl looked cute and lovely, only the arrogant frown between her eyebrows spoiled this delicate appearance. Xiao Xiao followed closely behind Hellion Yu. Young Lady Hellion, the servant hurriedly bowed respectfully. Hellion Yu raised her eyebrows. Have you seen Brother Lianqing? The servant was stunned with Hellion Yu's words, and a flash of light flashed through her eyes. In Wuxiang City, the only person the general condoned was Hellion Yu. No matter how much trouble Hellion Yu had caused, the general had never driven her out. In comparison, Lieni, who had followed the general since childhood, had never received such treatment. Suddenly, the servant gritted her teeth as she thought of Liania's heartbroken face just now. Young Lady Hellion, Master has just left. Chapter 1512, Brother Lianqing has left. Hellion Yu's eyes flashed with confusion. Where did he go? The servant bit her lip, hesitating. She was timid as if there were some things she did not dare to say. Suddenly, Hellion Yu's heart thudded. Tell me quickly, where did my brother Lianqing go? Did he go find demonic sluts out there? The servant panicked. No. No matter how others try to tempt Master, he will never fall for them. Initially, Hellion Yu should have been proud of herself after hearing these words. But somehow, when she saw the servant panicking, her heart sank a little. Someone has seduced Brother Lianqing, right? Who's that bitch? Is that bitch from the Zhuge family, or that deluded old woman from the Nangong family? The servant quickly kowtowed. Young Lady Hellion, please spare me. I don't dare to say it. Hellion Yu looked down at the servant kowtowing in front of her with anger on her delicate small face. Tell me who has seduced my brother Lianqing. I'll kill her. The servant looked up shakily. A married woman. A married woman? Is she the same old bitch like the one from the Nangong family? Hellion Yu gritted her teeth viciously. She was mourning alone these days and did not come to see Feng Lianqing when he came back. Who knew when she was not around, another old woman had tried to hook up with her brother Lianqing. Where's that shameless bitch? You're already married, and you're still hitting on brother Lianqing. Hellion Yu snorted. And what about my brother Lianqing, has he accepted that woman? The servant was a little afraid to look into Hellion Yu's eyes and lowered her head again. Master Lianqing fought with Maiden Lieni because of that woman, me for extra chapters. Hellion Yu's face was slightly pale. Brother Lianqing and Lieni fought. Well, she did not like Lieni, and there had been a time when someone from the general manor wanted to arrange a marriage between brother Lianqing and Lieni. However, they were childhood sweethearts. Every time brother Lianqing fought with Lieni, she would stand on the side, clapping her hands happily. But now brother Lianqing was arguing with her over another woman. Helian Yu had mixed feelings about it. He and Lieni are quarreling over that woman. Yes, young lady Helian. The servant smirked. She always kept her head down so that no one could see her expression. Maiden Lieni is a woman of integrity. She can't bear to see such a married woman still hitting on other men. Moreover, Maiden Lieni clearly knows that only young lady Helian deserves to be with Master Lianqing. How could she let other women seduce him? Seriously? Helian Yu felt a little skeptical. Doesn't that little bitch Lieni always feel dissatisfied with me because grandfather Tianya keeps backing me up? How can she have accepted me to become brother Lianqing's wife? Unbelievable. Yes, it's true. The servant finally dared to look into Helian Yu's eyes and said, young lady Helian, what I've said is true. That woman is so shameless. She already has a husband, but she is still seducing other men, and now even Master Lianqing has been bewitched by her. What if she really used her charms to trick Master Lianqing, and Master does not even realize that? Helian Yu's face changed dramatically. Whenever she thought of Feng Lianqing marrying another woman, she felt like 1,000 thorns piercing at and tearing her heart. It was so uncomfortable. Chapter 15:13, Lianya's hatred x no way. There was no way she could watch brother Lianqing marry someone else, especially a married woman. Young lady Helian, think about it. Master has even fought with Maiden Lieni over that woman. How long can Master be rational before he loses his mind because of that woman? The servant clenched her fists tightly. What Maiden Lieni said must be true. That woman has bewitched Master, and that's why Master is so helpful to her. He had even asked Maiden Lieni to apologize to her. A person of unknown background. What rights does she have to make Maiden Lieni apologize to her? Maiden Lieni is from the general manor. No one can treat her like that. Helian Yu gritted her teeth. Where's that bitch? I'm going to find her now. Wu Shangyin. The servant sneered. Xiao Xiao, let's go. I'm going to meet that vixen who wants to seduce brother Lianqing now. Helian Yu snorted. She turned around and walked out of the courtyard. She did not even notice that the moment she turned away, not far away, a figure slowly appeared from behind the big rock. Lieni looked at the departing Helian Yu calmly and sneered. Helian Yu has grown up but is still as stupid as before. Wouldn't it be too wasteful if we don't take advantage of such a person? After she saw that Helian Yu had disappeared, she came out from her hiding spot behind the rock. Maiden Lieni? The servant turned her head and saw Lieni walking over. She panicked and hurriedly kowtowed. What are you doing? Lieni asked, confused. The servant bit her lips. I've just told Helian Yu about the woman who has seduced Master Me for extra chapters. Lieni was startled. All people in Wushan City are already aware of Helian Yu's behavior. If you tell her about that, in case she causes trouble, Brother Feng will definitely be furious. By then, wouldn't it even cause Helian Yu to lose her place in his heart? Hearing these words, the servant was somewhat disdainful. Maiden, Helian Yu is no match for Master. Even without that married woman, Master still won't accept her. But have you ever thought that if Brother Feng knew about this, he would definitely blame us? Lieni looked at the servant disappointedly. If it weren't for us, Helian Yu wouldn't have gone causing trouble for that woman. The servant gritted her teeth. Maiden Lieni, don't worry. Maiden Lieni has saved my life back then. If Master asked about this, he'll take the blame, and he'll make sure this matter has nothing to do with Maiden Lieni. Moreover, Maiden Lieni didn't know about this matter. It was my own decision. Lieni pointed at the servant and sighed heavily. You must remember not to do that again in the future. If Brother Feng is angry, I will plead for you. The servant did not say any more. Lieni looked at the servant for a moment before she turned around and left. The servant stared at Lieni gratefully. Maiden Lieni is so kind. I've done such things, but Maiden Lieni is still willing to plead for me. I don't understand why Master would treat Maiden Lieni like this for an outsider. Wu Shangyin. The noisy inn suddenly became quiet after a figure hurriedly rushed in. Everyone was stunned as their eyes were fixed on the furious woman. They had even subconsciously moved to the side, afraid that standing in the way would cause harm to themselves. Chapter 15-14, Liania's Hatred 11, What is the Hellion family's member doing here? I'm not sure. I guess she is searching for somebody. Hellion Yu seems to have been quiet for a few days, but now she has started to cause trouble again. It's better if we just hide here. The general pampers her, so she fears nothing. The guest room was on the second floor. Hellion Yu was so furious that she quickly rushed upstairs to find that woman. But suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. She seemed to have fallen into deep thought. She left so fast that she forgot to ask the woman's name. After thinking about it, she simply grabbed a waiter and asked, "Let me ask you, has a woman been staying at the inn recently?" The waiter was stunned, and when he saw who was holding him back, his face was pale and scared. I'm not sure, Hellion Yu glared at the waiter. Fortunately, Xiao Xiao was quicker to react and quickly asked him, "Then, tell me if Master Lianqing has come to your inn to look for someone." Feng Lianqing was the master of the general manor and the god of war of Wushang City. Therefore, lots of people knew him. Even though Feng Ruqing was sitting in a corner, Feng Lianqing would attract countless people's attention as soon as he appeared. "Yes, he came here just now." The waiter was silent for a moment and said honestly, "But the woman he came to see is not a woman, it's a couple, and that woman is very young." Hellion Yu's face stiffened slightly. The servant from the general manor was telling the truth. Brother Lianqing really does have a girl he liked. "Oh, so you are the young lady from the Hellion family." The sound of the snort laugh came from the side, and when Hellion Yu turned around, she saw a man dressed in cotton robes, slowly walking toward her. The man had a smile on his lips, and he seemed somewhat interested in Hellion Yu who's standing in front of him. "Are you here to cause trouble to another girl again?" The man laughed. "Hellion Yu, I think you should stop chasing after Feng Lianqing. How about you become my concubine?" Hellion Yu snorted, "What's it to do with you if I'm pursuing Brother Lianqing? I'm not interested in being someone's concubine, me for extra chapters." "Hellion Yu, you're so foolish and only have a beautiful face. Do you think you're qualified to become my wife?" The man sneered. "Only a smart and well-mannered woman deserves to be my wife, not something that a reckless little girl like you can do." Hellion Yu did not say anything, she gazed fiercely at the young man. The young man lifted Hellion Yu's chin with the fan in his hand. "Isn't it because you have Tianya who always backs you up that you dare to be so arrogant? But this Wushang city is my chief family's territory after all, and Tianya is just our chief family's watchdog. Hellion Yu, if you know what you're doing, bang." Hellion Yu raised her foot and stepped on the young man's foot. You can only dream. She would rather pursue Brother Lianqing for the rest of her life than to be his concubine. She loved Feng Lianqing and nothing else. She did not care about his status either. Whether he was Grandfather Tian Ya's disciple or just an ordinary commoner. She just liked him as he was. Shit! The young man was so furious that he fiercely raised his foot and kicked Hellion Yu's chest. "Young lady!" Xiao Xiao screamed, worriedly. Everyone on the ground floor looked up and saw the young man had kicked Hellion Yu, sending her flying down. Chapter 15-15, Liania's Hatred 12. At this moment, the inn's main hall fell so quiet one could hear a pin drop. As soon as Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian walked in from outside the hall, she sensed that something was wrong. She followed the direction of others' gaze and immediately saw a familiar figure falling from the second floor and almost landing on top of her. Feng Ruqing instinctively pulled the young girl into her arms. Nan Xian was stunned. His expression changed slightly. It seems like Qing'er needs to break these habits and stop pitying other women. Having Guiyi was enough, she could not have another woman by her side. She could not even control herself. What if these women clung to her again, just like Guiyi? The entire inn was in a deafening silence. The young girl dressed in red was stunningly beautiful. Her beauty was breathtaking, mesmerizing. Because of her beauty, people did not even notice her pregnant belly. She lifted Helianyu with one of her hands, deliberately keeping her at a distance. The scene was quite mesmerizing. The crowd did not know why, but they actually felt that it was wonderful to see these two women together, and it strangely touched their hearts. Helianyu slowly opened her eyes and saw a beautiful stunning face looking at her. Before she could say a word, the girl had already let go of her hand. She then fell onto the floor in a heap. Sorry, Feng Ruqing crouched down, apologizing. No, it's all right. Helianyu looked at her in a daze. Feng Ruqing had saved her again. It was just a spontaneous reaction, and I've always been like that, Feng Ruqing said, feeling guilty. So I have accidentally caught you. But fortunately, I've dropped you again after regaining my senses. Helianyu was speechless. Oh, were you practicing flying just now, me for extra chapters? Practicing flying? What nonsense. Helianyu's face darkened. Someone had clearly kicked her down. Qing'er, Nan Xian pulled Feng Ruqing into his arms. He glanced at Helianyu coldly before turned back to Feng Ruqing and said, You must change this habit. Why? Feng Ruqing looked at Nan Xian, somewhat confused. Because, Nan Xian smiled faintly and said seriously. You are better than many men. These girls might secretly fall in love with you, and that will affect their marriage prospects. I see. Feng Ruqing blinked and nodded. Alright, next time, if anyone flies over me, I'll just kick her away. Helianyu patted her chest. She felt like a sword had penetrated her heart, and it was so cold. This guy is so mean. Is he a human? He's so sick. Young lady, Xiao Xiao cried as she rushed down. Young lady, are you alright? Does it hurt? I'm fine. Helianyu patted down her dress and stood up from the floor. She then looked at the man upstairs coldly. Fourth prince, even though you are a prince, you are no match for brother Lianqing. I'd rather become a servant girl for brother Lianqing than stay by your side as your concubine. The fourth prince ignored Helianyu as his eyes were fixed upon Feng Ruqing. There were so many beautiful girls in Wushang City, but he had never seen a girl who was as beautiful as her. Chapter 15-16, Lianya's Hatred 13. However, fourth prince was so disappointed as he saw Feng Ruqing's pregnant belly. What a pity. Such a beautiful girl has been ruined by a man. He liked beauties, but he did not like married women. This girl had the scent of another man on her body and was pregnant with his child. She was not his taste. He liked a girl who was pure and had not been tainted by any man yet. Helianyu, fourth prince looked at Helianyu again and sneered. I want to make you a concubine because I adored you. There is nothing that I can't get in this world. But now I'm not interested in you anymore. This woman had rejected him over and over again and embarrassed him in public. People would call him crazy if he still wanted her as a concubine. There were so many women in this world who wanted to sleep with him, and they were much more beautiful than Helianyu. What else did Helianyu have other than her look? Helianyu's small face turned red as she glared at fourth prince angrily. When grandfather Tianya returns, I'll tell him about this. Tianya. These two words inexplicably made Feng Ruqing's heart tremble. She then subconsciously held Helianyu's hand. Who did you just say? Tianya. Was he the same Tianya she was looking for? Helianyu was stunned and looked at Feng Ruqing suspiciously. Xiaoqing, what? What happened to you? Nothing. That Tianya you were talking about, oh, he's my brother Lianking's master. Wait. Lianqing. Feng Lianqing. Tianya is Feng Lianking's master. Feng Ruqing slowly closed her eyes, her heart trembling. If Tianya's family name is also Feng, then is he really Feng Wuhui? Shaoqing, Nan Xian held Feng Ruqing's hand. The warmth of the man's palm had gradually calmed her heart. She could not ask too much about Tianya yet. Me for extra chapters. She was not sure if Tianya was really Feng Wuhui, and even if it was confirmed, how could he believe that she was Feng Tianhui's daughter after Tianya had been away for so many years? After all, when Tianya left back then, her father had not been married, and she had not been born yet. Fine. Feng Ruqing opened her eyes. It seemed that she had come to the right place, Wushang City. You go on and leave me alone. Oh, Helian Yu was a bit dumbfounded. By the time she turned back to continue arguing with Fourth Prince, he had already walked down the stairs. He stopped in front of Helian Yu and sneered. Go and tell Tianya. Why should I be afraid of him? As soon as he finished speaking, he pushed Helian Yu down hard and walked toward the door. Helian Yu's small face was filled with anger. Are all people in the palace so arrogant? Xiao Xiao felt so awkward. Young lady, you're pretty much the same as them. Young lady, have you forgotten why we're here? Xiao Xiao whispered, reminding her. Oh, that's right, Helian Yu suddenly went to the waiter and picked up his lapel fiercely. Tell me quickly, where is the woman who seduced my brother Lianqing? The waiter was startled and looked at Feng Ruqing. Helian Yu snorted, why are you looking at Shaoqing? Where the hell is that old woman? A woman who already has a husband but is still seducing other men. I won't let her near my brother Lianqing. The waiter subconsciously swallowed his saliva. His body trembled non-stop as he carefully said, But the one that Master Lianqing met just now was this maiden. Helian Yu was dumbfounded and said furiously, nonsense. Shaoqing is so young and beautiful, how could she be the woman described by those people in the general manner? But Master Lianqing really came to see them, and Master Lianqing has been kicked out from here. Helian Yu was stunned. She turned her head stiffly, and her big bright eyes were blank. Shaoqing, you know brother Lianqing? Feng Ruqing nodded. Oh, Helian Yu was silent for a moment and then asked, then, do you know who is the woman that all people in the general manner are talking about? Either way, she knew that that person could not be Feng Ruqing. If it really was her, then that would be too hard to accept. Helian Yu bit her lip. She did not have any friends in her life, much less anyone to help her when she needed them. Feng Ruqing was the only friend that she had even if she were not really sincere in saving her. But Shaoqing is already married to this man. And he's not bad. If it's really her, brother Lianqing will be heartbroken. Feng Ruqing paused, it was me. The entire inn was quiet again. Everyone's gazes all fell on Feng Ruqing and Helian Yu. It was a well-known fact that Helian Yu was overbearing and very possessive. She even fought with her own cousin for Feng Lianqing, not to mention an outsider. When Feng Ruqing said that, the crowd could already imagine that Helian Yu would surely become furious and even fight with her on the spot. Helian Yu remained silent for a long time. Just when the crowd thought she would not speak again, the young girl suddenly spoke. Oh, those people in the general manner have a problem with their eyes. Her unexpected response had ruined the rigorous atmosphere of that moment. Everyone was stunned as no one had ever thought that Helian Yu would still be so calm. Why? Feng Ruqing raised her eyebrows and asked. Helian Yu bit her lip. You're still a young girl even though you are married. She said you are a married woman, and I thought you were an old lady. Shaoqing, brother Lianqing, rarely goes to meet a girl. Even though I'm so close to him, he has never taken the initiative to look for me first. I am afraid that Brother Lianqing is really interested in you, me for extra chapters. This time, she was not afraid that Feng Lianqing would really fall in love with Feng Ruqing. After all, the one standing in front of her was a person who had saved her life. But she was afraid that the man she loved the most would be hurt. Feng Ruqing could sense Nan Xian's cold aura and hurriedly said, I think you've misunderstood. What? Helian Yu looked at Feng Ruqing, confused. Feng Lianqing came to see me apologize. Apologize? Helian Yu became more and more confused. Why did Brother Lianqing apologize to Feng Ruqing? Did Brother Lianqing hurt you? She bit her lip and asked. If Brother Lianqing had really hurt Shaoqing, then who should she help then? It was such a mess. It's not him. It's Lianyi, Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. She tried to kill me, and Feng Lianqing came to apologize on her behalf. Helian Yu was startled. Her gaze grew serious. Feng Lianyi wanted to kill you. Feng Lianyi. Feng Ruqing raised her eyebrows. It turned out that her family name was also Feng. All this time, Feng Ruqing only knew that her name was Lianyi. Yes, she set me up. Feng Ruqing's words had instantly caused Helian Yu to burn with rage. How dare that little bitch, Feng Lianyi, trying to kill my savior. Young lady, Xiao Xiao carefully pulled Helian Yu's sleeve. That little servant from the general manor just now. It seems like she was Lianyi's servant. Helian Yu's expression changed dramatically. If that little servant was one of Feng Lianyi's people, that meant Feng Lianyi was using her. Bitch, how dare you use me? Helian Yu looked even more furious. Fortunately, she and Feng Ruqing were already acquainted, but what if they had not known each other? She might have fallen for her tricks and mistakenly harm an innocent person. Then, Brother Lianqing would definitely scold her. It was truly a good plan to kill two birds with one stone. Of course, in Helian Yu's heart, there was never a distinction between guilt and innocence. Her attitude depended on the person in front of her, and the outcome would have been different too. Xiao Xiao, let's go find Brother Lianqing. I have to tell him about this and let him know what kind of snake Feng Lianyi is. Helian Yu stormed out of the inn as soon as she finished speaking, leaving a silent crowd behind. Feng Ruqing exhaled slowly. She's finally left. Qing'er, Nan Xian lifted his hand and pulled Feng Ruqing into his arms. He then touched her head and said gently, let's move somewhere else, shall we? Feng Ruqing nodded. I have thought of the same thing. There is always someone disturbing us. Let's go, let's move somewhere else. First, it was Feng Lianqing, then it was the Empress, and now even Helian Yu has come. I can't live in this inn anymore. Me for extra chapters. Outside General Manor. Feng Lianqing was just about to step into the manor when a voice suddenly came from the side, causing him to stop in his tracks. Brother Lianqing. Feng Lianqing frowned. When he turned back, he saw Helian Yu anxiously headed toward him. She had obviously run over, somewhat out of breath, looking panicked. Facing Helian Yu, Feng Lianqing still gave her some respect and did not directly leave. He pursed his thin lips and asked, Young Lady Helian, what brings you here? Why do you look so anxious? Helian Yu was startled, looking a bit aggravated. Why are you distancing yourself from me? Master has said that if you don't like someone, you can't give any hope to that person. Young Lady Helian, I don't have any feelings for you, so you don't need to waste your time with me. He had never been an indecisive person. He was very clear with his feelings. If he did not like somebody, he would firmly reject her. He would not give her any hope or make her fall deeper in love with him. I came to find you this time because of Feng Lianyi. Helian Yu thought of the purpose of this visit. She bit her lip, trying not to be sad. Brother Feng, do you know what kind of person Feng Lianyi is? Feng Lianqing was slightly stunned. He did not understand what Helian Yu meant by this. When I went to look for you just now, her servant told me that a woman named Feng Ruqing had seduced you. Feng Lianqing was shocked, and he hurriedly held Helian Yu's shoulder. Did you fight with her? Helian Yu looked at Feng Lianqing and shook her head sadly. No, I won't cause any trouble for her. I know Feng Lianyi wants to use me against her. Brother Lianqing, do you think someone like Feng Lianyi must stay in the general manner? Feng Lianqing's eyes were slightly sunken as he grabbed Helian Yu's hand and said, Come with me. Helian Yu lowered her eyes to the hand that was being pulled by Feng Lianqing. She pursed her pink lips slightly and followed him in. From afar, she could hear a harsh scolding sound in front of her. Helian Yu's eyes turned cold. The sky in the general manor was blue, and in the back garden, a servant was kneeling on the ground. Her face soaked with tears as she begged for mercy. Maiden Lianyi, I was wrong. I will never dare to do it again. Please let me go. Feng Lianyi stood in front of the servant. She looked angry, and her beautiful eyes were filled with disappointment. I've always treated you nicely and have taught you well. Why did you do such a thing? Why? The servant kowtowed. Maiden Lianyi, I know I was wrong. I beg you to spare my life. I will never dare to speak nonsense again. Feng Lianyi slapped the servant angrily, and as she turned her head, she saw Feng Lianqing and Helian Yu approaching them together. Big brother Feng, you're just in time. I have really crossed the line. She talked nonsense in front of Sister Helian and framed Maiden Feng. Luckily, I found out about it. Sister Helian, you haven't gone to find Maiden Feng yet, right? Feng Lianyi asked with a smile. Fortunately, she had sent someone to follow Helian Yu, and only then did Feng Lianyi know about what had happened at the inn. She had managed to control the situation now. If Feng Lianqing knew about it first, he would never agree to help her again. It was you who framed Shaoqing. Helian Yu glared at her. Feng Lianyi was shocked. Why would I do that? I've already done her wrong, so why should I accuse her? Brother Feng, I really didn't know anything about it. It was all her fault, me for extra chapters. The little servant kowtowed hard. Her forehead was bleeding, and her eyes were filled with tears. Master, this is all my fault. It has nothing to do with Maiden Lianyi, she knows nothing. I couldn't watch Master Lianqing protect an outsider that much. So, I took it out on her. It was indeed my plan, and Maiden Lianyi was completely unaware of it. Lianyi was so good to her, so she could not let Lianyi take the blame for it. Brother Lianqing. Helian Yu turned to Feng Lianqing. She's the one who wants to harm Shaoqing. Shaoqing said that Lianyi had set her up. You must drive her out from General Manor, otherwise, how can I face Shaoqing in the future? Shaoqing had first saved her from the spirit beasts and later saved her from those families' siege. And today, she had pulled her away from trouble in time. Even though in the end, she threw her onto the floor miserably. But she owed Feng Ruqing her life, and if she could not seek justice for her, how could she face her in the future? Feng Lianqing squinted as he looked at Lianyi. Is it true that you have nothing to do with this matter? Chapter 1520, Helian Yu's protection for Feng Lianyi trembled as she could sense doubt in Feng Lianqing's tone. She clenched her fists hard and smiled bitterly. I know you won't believe me. But I, Feng Lianyi, will do what I say. If I really did it, I will admit it, and I've proved that before. Feng Lianqing did not say anything and looked at Feng Lianyi coldly. His eyes no longer had the kindness they used to have, instead, they were cold. Brother Feng, it's fine. You wouldn't believe me anyway. Feng Lianyi smiled and stepped forward. You can punish me as you wish, expel me as well. I just wanted to say one more thing in self-defense. She paused for a moment and said, if I really did it, why did I punish this servant after discovering it? I can wait until you find it to prove it. Moreover, I've just sent someone to stop Sister Helian. Feng Lianqing seemed not to believe Feng Lianyi. Suddenly, the old housekeeper hurriedly walked in from outside the courtyard. Maiden Lianyi, you're really killing me. The old housekeeper wiped the sweat from his forehead. You told me to stop young Lady Helian from causing trouble, but young Lady Helian was no longer there when I ran over there. It just makes me tired running all over for nothing. The old housekeeper was too old to do such things. If this matter had nothing to do with Helian Yu, he would not have run around at his old age. But as soon as he heard Feng Lianyi said that Helian Yu would cause trouble again, he was so worried that he hurriedly ran out, not even taking a break on his way to the inn. Feng Lianqing smiled faintly at Feng Lianqing. You don't believe my words, but do you not even believe the old housekeeper's words? If I really wanted to harm her, why would I let the old housekeeper stop Helian Yu? Indeed, he did not believe Feng Lianyi's words. But the old housekeeper had only been loyal to the general all his life, and he would trust anything he said. Did this matter really have nothing to do with Lianyi? You young people solve your own matters. Next time don't torment me like this. The old housekeeper sighed. General is not here, and I am already tired. Young Lady Helian, please behave. Otherwise, General will lecture you again when he comes back. Helian Yu clenched her fists tightly and looked at Feng Lianyi. Me for extra chapters. I don't believe it. It must be you who did that. Feng Lianyi smiled helplessly. Sister Helian, I know you don't like me. You don't have to stare at me like that. I repeat, I won't deny what I've done, and I won't admit what I haven't. Enough. Feng Lianqing felt a headache coming. He looked at Feng Lianyi and warned her again. Lianyi, I hope you will remember what you said. If you cause trouble again, I will not wait for Master to return. I will kick you out myself. Feng Lianyi clenched her fists and took a deep breath. You don't have to remind me. I'd also feel embarrassed to stay in general manner if I made the same mistake again. Feng Lianqing said no more and turned back to Helian Yu. Young Lady Helian, you should leave first. Brother Lianqing. Helian Yu's face turned pale. All right, we won't talk about today's matter. But what about before? What about the fact that she has harmed Xiaoqing before? Feng Lianqing rubbed his throbbing temples. When Master returns, he will deal with it. And what would happen then? Is Brother Lianqing still going to speak up for her and allow her to remain in general manner? Helian Yu glared furiously. Moreover, no one knows when Grandfather Tianya will return. Can you guarantee that she won't find trouble with Xiaoqing during this time? Helian Yu's eyes were fixed on Feng Lianqing as she asked, Brother Lianqing, let me just ask you something. Are you willing to kick her out of this place immediately? Feng Lianqing was startled and paused for a moment. When Master returns, he will deal with it. That sentence again. Helian Yu lowered her eyes to cover the grief in her eyes. I know that in Brother Lianqing's heart, I'm no match with Feng Lianyi in any way. Feng Lianqing was stunned. He and Helian Yu had known each other for a long time. Back then, their relationship was not like this. It was even more intimate than with Feng Lianyi. But ever since Helian Yu had confessed her feeling to him, he had deliberately kept his distance from her, not wanting her to fall deeper for him. But somehow, he had treated her like a stranger now. I'll just ask one last question. Helian Yu raised her head and looked deeply into Feng Lianqing's eyes. Will you let her go? Feng Lianqing was silent. He knew what was behind this choice. Only after a few moments did he ask hoarsely, Yuer, do you really have to do this? Yuer. It seemed like a long time since that name had been used. He had not called her that since she had confessed her love to him. Perhaps she had taken a wrong step from the start. Brother Lianqing never had her in his heart, and even if she fought for it, even if she was hostile to the women who came close to him, he still would not like her. Me for extra chapters. You're defending her, so I can defend Shaoqing. Is that wrong? Helian Yu sneered. I liked you because I liked your determination. I liked your fairness, and I liked your uprightness and boldness. You are the god of war in this world, and you will always be my hero. But, she laughed to herself. My hero can only live in my dreams. Now, you can't even distinguish right and wrong, so you are no longer the brother Lianqing, who I once liked. Xiao Xiao, who was right behind Helian Yu, was speechless. Young lady, don't you feel ashamed to say that? Aren't you the biggest disaster in the world? If Master Lianqing were really upright and fair, he would have already punished you for bullying those people in Wushang City. Oh, Anne. You also said not long ago that you liked Master Lianqing because of his handsome face. When had he become your hero? Forget it, Feng Lianyi shook her head. I'd better leave this place. The people in General Manor can't forgive me, nor can Sister Helian. I don't want you to be embarrassed because of me. Big brother Feng, I'll pack my things and leave, and this servant. Since you've made a mistake, you'll be leaving with me. Feng Lianyi looked at every blade of grass and tree in the General Manor with a bitter smile on her face. Enough. Feng Lianqing snapped coldly. I said I'd wait for Master to come back to settle this matter, so I'll wait for him to come back. Whether you can stay here or not is up to Master. I won't meddle with this. And I don't care if what happened just now had anything to do with you. She's your servant, so you're responsible for her. There is no way she can stay in the General Manor again, and you must also meet Maiden Feng to apologize. There was determination within Feng Lianyi's heroic brows and eyes. I understand. My people have committed a mistake, and I admit it. I'll make sure to apologize. After hearing this, Feng Lianqing no longer looked at Feng Lianyi. He turned to Helian Yu. Young Lady Helian, I will give Maiden Feng an explanation, so don't worry. Maiden Feng has helped me a lot, so I won't let her suffer. Lianyi must kowtow and apologize until Feng Ruqing forgives her. However, what surprised Feng Lianqing was that hot-tempered, reckless Helian Yu could become friends with Maiden Feng. Helian Yu pursed her lips, and she no longer spoke much. She simply looked, disappointed, at Feng Lianqing. I understand. She sneered and eventually took a few steps back. Without another word, she turned around and left. Gazing at Helian Yu's departing back, Feng Lianqing somehow felt uneasy as if his heart had lost something. I'm sorry, Brother Feng, Feng Lianyi apologized and lowered her head. I'm the one who has caused you trouble. It's better for me to leave so that Sister Helian won't misunderstand you again. But I don't know what Feng Ruqing has done to her. Sister Helian obviously hates any woman who gets close to you, but why is she defending her? Shut up. Feng Lianqing snapped coldly, turning to Feng Lianyi expressionlessly. Feng Lianyi, mind your own business. I've forgiven you, and I'll never allow you to make another mistake. If I find out that this matter has something to do with you, even if Master hasn't come back, I'll drive you out on his behalf. As soon as he finished his words, Feng Lianqing walked out of the courtyard without so much as a glance at Feng Lianyi. The sun was warm today, but it still could not warm his cold heart. East Street, Wushang City. A beautiful courtyard was located here, with small bridges, flowing water, and 100 flowers in full bloom. Feng Ruqing leaned lazily on the soft couch. Little Qing Han carefully snuggled into her embrace, afraid that she would accidentally injure the baby in her womb. Now that I've left the inn and bought a manor, I don't think anyone should be able to find me for a while. It was so hard for her to have a few days of leisure. Let's go, little Qing Han. Let's go see how those spirit beasts are doing. Feng Ruqing yawned and stood up from the soft couch smilingly. All right. Little Qing Han stood behind Feng Ruqing and followed her out. Those spirit beasts from the Spirit Beast Mountain were good at their jobs, taking care of the courtyard, and keeping it in order. Shao Qing, suddenly, a familiar voice came out of the courtyard door, making Feng Ruking's body freeze abruptly. The moment she turned around, she could see Helian Yu rushing toward her. Feng Ruking's face darkened. Fortunately, little Qing Han was fast enough, and with a swish, vines came out of the ground, instantly wrapping around Helian Yu's body and hanging her in the air. Young lady, me for extra chapters. Xiao Xiao was terrified, and her face turned pale with fear. Feng Ruqing glanced at Qing Han and said, Qing Han, put her down. All right. Little Qing Han was very obedient, and after Feng Ruqing ordered her to, she had released the vines and threw Helian Yu on the ground. Helian Yu was only dropped from the mid-air, but the fall caused great pain to her buttocks. She looked so pitiful and miserable. How did you find me? Feng Ruking's face darkened. She had purposely bought a manor to avoid these people, but she had not expected to be found this soon. I've asked the waiter to send someone to follow you. Helian Yu said this as if she had done nothing wrong, not feeling the slightest bit ashamed by it. Feng Ruqing was speechless. Helian Yu bit her lip and asked, Shao Qing, am I annoying? Well, maybe just a little, like too clingy. She had purposely avoided these people, and they still would not leave her alone. Can't I even have some quiet time alone with Nanxian? Helian Yu's face was pale, and her eyes were overflowing with tears, but she finally managed to endure it with a bitter smile on her face. It seems like no one else has truly loved me except grandfather and grandfather Tianya. Even my uncle, who I used to think was sincere, is only treating me like this because I'm his own daughter, and he feels guilty about it. Feng Ruqing rubbed her temples as if she had a headache. She looked down, picked up a spade from the ground, and handed it to Helian Yu. Helian Yu was stunned. What's this? With all that time to think about so much mess, why don't you tidy up my back garden? I'm going to plant some spirit herbs later. Oh, Helian Yu was startled at first, but she realized that she had held the spade for some time when she came back to her senses. But I've never done this kind of work before. She was a little anxious. She had been spoiled since she was a child, and her servants served her everything. When had she ever done this kind of work? There's a first time for everything. You'll slowly get used to it. Once you know how to do it correctly, you'll naturally forget those unpleasant things. Feng Ruqing smiled as she squatted down to pick up another spade and passed it to Xiao Xiao. This is yours. These spirit beasts will tell you what to do later. Xiao Xiao was dumbfounded. So, she and the young lady came here only to be coolies. Without waiting for them to open their mouths again, Feng Ruqing has already held Qing Han's small hand and walked away. Finally, we've found something for them to do, otherwise, Feng Ruqing slowly exhaled. Her front foot had just stepped into the room when a heartbreaking scream suddenly rang out violently, making her whole face livid. Ah, why are these leopards following pretty sister back? My meat doesn't taste good, don't eat me, go away. Feng Ruqing suddenly clenched her fists tightly, and the smile on her face had disappeared entirely. She looked tense, and the air around her turned cold. In the front yard. Me for extra chapters. The little fatty was paralyzed on the ground. He had peed his pants, emanating a foul smell. A big leopard stood in front of him, gazing down at him with a disdainful sneer. The little fatty was crying with fear, tears, and snot streaming down his face. Someone help me. The leopard is going to eat me. Help me. It was hard for him to escape from the Spirit Beast Mountain, but he did not expect to end up in these leopards' mouths after all. At this moment, the little fatty's heart was so cold as if he had already predicted his end. Leopard. A familiar voice came from the side, causing the leopard to stop moving. He then turned back and looked at Feng Ruqing respectfully. Master, do you need anything? These people have volunteered to come here to work, so don't waste them. Go get him some shovels and let him work in the backyard too. Feng Ruching smiled. She was already having a hard time hiding in this place, and none of these people could let her live peacefully. In that case, she would have to drag them in and make them her coolie. Pretty sister, the little fatty still had fear in his eyes, but Feng Ruching's appearance eventually made him feel better, and he hurriedly pounced at her. However, the little fatty was not like the snow wolf that would forget things easily. He still remembered. Pretty sister hates men. Don't ever touch her, or you'll be kicked. The little fatty was very obedient and stood not far from Feng Ruching. He looked a bit sad and said, I went to the inn to look for you, but the waiter said you've moved here. I had a hard time looking for you, and this leopard almost ate me. Feng Ruching was speechless. Who is that waiter? Does he hold a grudge against me? And why did he trap me like this? Feng Ruching's face changed dramatically. She smirked as she looked at the little fatty. The little fatty shivered and subconsciously took a few steps back, gazing timidly at Feng Ruching. He did not understand why Feng Ruching looked at him like that, as he had done nothing wrong. Come with me. Feng Ruching turned around and walked toward the back garden. All right. That little fatty was no longer as arrogant and overbearing as when he first met her and obediently followed Feng Ruching. As he reached in the back garden, he suddenly saw the Helian family's young lady, Helian Yu, holding a shovel. He was stunned and confused. At that time, Helian Yu had also turned her head and immediately saw the little fatty following behind Feng Ruching. She jumped up and pointed at the little fatty with the shovel. What is this fatty doing here? Looking at Helian Yu's livid face, Feng Ruching shrugged and said, same as you. Helian Yu was puzzled at first, but she seemed to have figured out what Feng Ruching meant just now. She could not help but stare at the little fatty who was also holding a shovel, startled. 7th Prince Qi Yu, who had always been pampered by the Emperor and the Empress, had always done whatever he wanted. He was arrogant and overbearing. Like her, he was also the bully of Wushang City, feared by everyone. But now, this bully wanted to come and work in the backyard with her. Helian Yu suddenly wanted to laugh because she never thought this fatty would come to this. Ha ha ha. Hurry up and get to work. Feng Ruching lazily stretched her body, smiling at the little fatty. I will come to check on you from time to time. But, the little fatty was hesitant. These jobs are done by people in the palace. I've never done it before, and am not one who can do rough work. He was the 7th Prince of Wushang City. How could he do this kind of work that had always been done by a servant? I asked you to work so that you can cultivate your temperament. One of you only knows how to chase after men, and the other one has a bad attitude. If you work for me for another 10 days and half a month, you might be able to control your temperament, me for extra chapters. A snow leopard pushed a chair toward Feng Ruching. Feng Ruching sat down lazily, her body leaning against the chair, looking a little lazy. She smiled as she gazed at the two persons under the sun. Oh, the little fatty was somewhat dumbfounded, nodding his head. So pretty sister does this all for my own good. Mother is right. She wants me to learn more from pretty sister, that's why she had allowed me to leave the palace to come to you. Feng Ruching frowned abruptly. The Empress sent you to find me? The little fatty nodded honestly, his eyes blinking. At that moment, Feng Ruching's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, gritting her teeth. She sent someone to stalk me in the first place, and I haven't gotten even with her yet, and now she wants to kill me with this kid. She just wanted to spend a few days in peace with Nan Xian. She had deliberately chosen such a remote place to hide from them. But in the end, a waiter, a lunatic, an empress. All of them would not even let her live peacefully. Feng Ruching suddenly smiled. Somehow, Helian Yu felt that this smile was a little cold and eerie, and she could not help but take a few steps back. Shao Qing, Your smile is a little scary. Feng Ruching recomposed her expression and said, all of you continue to work, and when you've improved your temperament, you can leave. Oh, the little fatty nodded obediently. Pretty sister is always right, and since she said it could help prove my temperament, it must be so. Therefore, he obediently picked up a shovel before walking to the back garden and shoveling the soil. Leopard, you watch them. Feng Ruching yawned languidly. I'm tired. I'm going to rest for a while. She walked to the room after saying this. The leopard frowned and scanned the little fatty who had almost become its food, drooling again as its eyes were filled with greed. Seeing its bloodthirsty gaze, the little fatty trembled all over and took a few steps back in fear. Feng Ruching could sense something. She stopped in her tracks and said calmly, Ah Hua, don't eat it. I'm still short of coolies. Sure enough, Feng Ruching's words caused Ah Hua to withdraw its gaze. It walked toward the little fatty proudly. You two handle this place. I need to take the spirit beasts to plant the herbs. Alright, Helian Yu was used to such an attitude from the leopard. But when the little fatty had been treated like this, he was about to get angry. His eyes suddenly met the leopard's eyes, and he was so scared that he immediately swallowed back the words he had almost said. Alright, the leopard saw that these two were indeed obedient, so he did not stay any longer and walked forward proudly. Feng Manor. Nan Xian was dressed in white, standing outside the manor with one hand behind his back calmly. He stared at the plaque with Feng Manor written on it. This should be the general's manor. The general's manor was not strictly guarded, but Nan Xian did not intend to go in. He was just taking a look on behalf of Feng Ruching. After taking a glance, he planned to leave. At this time, Feng Lianyi happened to walk out of the gate. She immediately saw Nan Xian, who was about to leave. She was stunned at first, but then joy surged to her heart. Me for extra chapters. Master Nan Xian, are you here to find me? Why don't you come in and sit? Why are you leaving so soon? Where's your wife? Is she not with you? This voice was unfamiliar to Nan Xian. However, he still turned back to look at the woman standing at the main gate of the manor. The woman was in a snow-colored dress, her eyebrows were thick, and her lips seemed to be curved into a slight, shy smile. Feng Lianyi looked at Nan Xian's white robe that was also as white as snow. Who knew what came to her mind that had made her face turn even redder? But she did not bow her head like those other shy girls. Instead, she looked boldly and directly at Nan Xian. Master Nan Xian, why are you alone? Where's Maiden Feng? Nan Xian glanced at her coldly. You know Qing'er. Feng Lianyi was stunned, her eyes somewhat blank as she looked at Nan Xian. Master Nan Xian, didn't we travel together when we were in the Spirit Beast Mountain back then? Didn't your wife come along for the ride? Nan Xian frowned and thought for a moment. All he could think of was a blurred face. It was impossible to recall that person's face. But after Feng Lianyi had mentioned it, he did know who that person was. A woman who looked similar to Tang Yin, who had piqued Qing'er's interest. He did not even clearly remember Tang Yin's face, let alone the one in front of him. Well, are you the one who wanted to harm Qing'er? The wind blew at his sleeves, making him look as calm as an immortal. I was looking for you, but I couldn't find you. And now you've come to me yourself. It was true that Nan Xian could not find Feng Lianyi because his mind was all a blur, and he was completely unable to remember her face. Even the name. He had somehow forgotten her name. Chapter 1526, Helian Yu has changed. Feng Lianyi would still be somewhat happy if she only listened to Nan Xian's last words, but her expression suddenly changed when she recalled his previous sentence. Master Nan Xian, Feng Lianyi took a deep breath. I think you might have misunderstood me. I didn't want to harm your wife. I was just telling the truth about what happened that day. I can't cover her just because she is your wife. But who would have thought that the emperor and the empress would misunderstand it? If it were not because of her, Nansien would not have even had the chance to meet the emperor and the empress, and she was not even afraid that Nansien would tell them that. Master, Qing Zhu came out from Nansien's sleeve. It looked somewhat annoyed as it rolled its eyes at Feng Lianyi and said, "Didn't that empress come to see Feng Ruqing? Why don't you go ask her if she misunderstood Feng Ruqing?" Feng Lianyi was stunned. The empress went to see Feng Ruqing. Why? The high noble empress did not have to go by herself even if she had misunderstood Feng Ruqing. Ridiculous. This damned snake is lying to me. Master Nansien, you've misunderstood me. I, Feng Lianyi, have always strived to be a righteous person all my life. I have never done anything against my conscience. Feng Lianyi smiled bitterly. But if you really misunderstood me, then I can't do anything about it. I certainly didn't do anything wrong. Qing Zhu was stunned. It widened its eyes and stared at the shameless girl in front of it. It did not expect her to say these words as if nothing had happened. Qing Zhu turned its head and saw a young man in a silk robe walk over while waving his folding fan. Qing Zhu was somewhat familiar with that young man. It seemed like he was the man who had bullied Helian Yu at the inn that day. Qing Zhu frowned and sneered. "Hey, idiot!" The young man was still laughing with the person next to him, ignoring Qing Zhu. Qing Zhu was furious. "I'm talking to you, fourth prince. The idiot who bullied Helian Yu." The young man turned and looked at Nansien. "Were you the one cursing me just now?" Nansien was stunned. He silently lowered his head and looked at the snake that came out from his sleeve. "Me for extra chapters." "Stupid. I'm the one shouting at you, not my master," Qing Zhu snapped. The young man followed the voice and saw a small green snake. The snake looked arrogant, raising its chin to stare directly at him. "You're insolent." The fourth prince was furious. "How dare this little snake be so rude to me?" Qing Zhu smiled. "This woman is bad-mouthing your royal family." The young man was stunned. He raised his eyes, and his blank gaze fell on Feng Lianyi. Feng Lianyi was quite beautiful, but unfortunately, she was not his type. He was more interested in cute little girls. "What are you talking about?" Feng Lianyi's expression changed slightly, looking a little frustrated. "Why did this bastard appear here? Damn!" Chapter 1527, Helian Yu has changed too. Just now, you said that you didn't frame Feng Ruqing in front of the emperor, but the emperor himself was too stupid and misunderstood Feng Ruqing. Qing Zhu smirked. Feng Lianyi's expression changed immediately, somewhat panicked. Ridiculous. When have I said such a thing? However, before Feng Lianyi could explain, the young man's cold eyes were already fixed upon her. "Are you saying that my father is stupid?" Fourth prince was always arrogant and overbearing, bullying women, and committed all sorts of crime. But he was so loyal to the emperor. He would not tolerate anyone insulting his father. Especially this little girl from the general's manor. "I didn't." Feng Lianyi's face turned pale, and she looked at Qing Zhu with eyes filled with hatred. Fourth prince sneered. "Feng Lianyi, call Feng Lianqing out. The people of the general manor are revolting. I'll report to the emperor about this and tell him that you are trying to plot a rebellion." Feng Lianyi panicked. She was just thinking of defending herself in front of Nansien. How could it have escalated to the general manor trying to plot a rebellion? If the general knew about this, he would definitely not let her go. "Fourth prince," Feng Lianyi smiled forcibly. "It was Master Nansien and the others who have misunderstood. I didn't insult the emperor like that, it's just that they had some misunderstandings about me before. I just wanted to explain a bit. I didn't mean anything by it." Qing Zhu nodded. So you just told the emperor that Feng Ruqing was only there to remind Feng Lianqing that he had gone the wrong way, causing him to be angry and drive that little fatty away? Fourth Prince's expression looked much better as he heard the words little fatty. The snake had just addressed him as Fourth Prince. And the 3 words that little fatty had made him happy. To him, Wushang City only needed 1 prince. The Empress was the little fatty's mother, and she had always given the 4th prince a hard time. Therefore, he was not in a good relationship with that little fatty, but he did not dare to go against him openly. Me for extra chapters. Therefore, Qing Zhu's disrespect for the little fatty made him feel happy, so happy that he wanted to laugh out loud. That's right. At that time, you told father that it was Feng Lianqing who harmed the little fatty, right? Feng Lianya's face was pale, and her lips were trembling. Facing Nan Xian, she could still tell a few lies, but the one standing in front of her now was 4th Prince. If 4th Prince told the Emperor about this, her life would be miserable. 4th Prince. I didn't mean that. Her voice was trembling. Then, what did you mean? 4th Prince's face was livid. Is it really my father's fault? Feng Lianyi, I will definitely tell father that the general manor is plotting a rebellion, and you'll see what will happen to all of you. Nan Xian looked at Qing Zhu with a cold, expressionless face. Qing Zhu quickly got back into Nan Xian's sleeve. Oh, no. Master is angry. The general of the general manor, Tianya, was most likely the prince's grandfather, and if he were dragged down because of this matter, its master would definitely chop it up. Nan Xian's method of dealing with the situation was simple and straightforward. He waved his sleeve, and with a boom, 4th Prince's body was violently lifted and thrown into the middle of the street. 4th Prince was stunned. He did not understand what was happening and looked at Nan Xian angrily. He was so angry his whole body burned with rage. You, bang! Nan Xian raised his hand again, causing 4th Prince to roll on the street a few times like a ball until he disappeared. Feng Lianyi was shocked. She slowly raised her head, her gaze fixed upon Nan Xian. Her heart was beating so hard that it seemed like it was going to jump out of her body, making her face blushed. Was Master Nan Xian helping me just now? Even if the one who wanted to harm her was his pet snake, did Master Nan Xian ultimately choose her? Feng Lianyi smiled and slowly walked toward Nan Xian. She wanted to lean into him more, she wanted to feel his breath. She wanted to embrace him. He had just kicked the prince away to save her. Thank you, boom. A powerful force came slamming into her chest, sending her flying away. Her eyes were filled with shock and confusion. Too close, gross. He could not tolerate anyone standing too close to him except for Feng Ruqing. It was a feeling that made him feel nauseous. Bang! Feng Lianyi fell from the sky and into the courtyard. Her mind was blank, clearly not understanding what was happening now. Me for extra chapters. He had just saved her. Feng Lianqing had sensed that something was up and walked out of the manor. He frowned as he saw Feng Lianyi lying on the ground helplessly. He then looked at the gate and saw a man dressed in white and looked as cold as the moon standing in front of the manor. He suddenly turned back to Feng Lianyi and said coldly, Feng Lianyi, have you forgotten what I once said to you? Feng Lianyi pursed her lips lightly as she covered her scuffed arm and stood up from the ground, her face filled with frustration. But when she looked up at Nan Xian, she suddenly realized that Nan Xian had already turned away. He never looked at her from the beginning. At this moment, her heart was cold as if she had fallen into a trough, and coolness invaded her heart. Feng Lianyi. When Feng Lianqing saw Feng Lianyi still in that state, he was angry. His gaze was cold and stern. I have said that what is not yours won't be yours no matter what. Why are you so persistent about it? Feng Lianyi was slightly startled, which was why she turned to look at Feng Lianqing, disappointedly. Big brother Feng, we've been together for years since we were kids, and you've never trusted me, right? Feng Lianyi looked tense. That's right. I did make a mistake at first because I was jealous of her, and at the same time, I wanted to save you, so that was all I could do. Feng Lianyi sneered. But when it's clear that I didn't compel Sister Helian to trouble her, you still doubt me. I'm not even doing anything now. Feng Lianyi raised her head, her face was cold. I don't know what Maiden Feng has told him that made him do that as soon as he saw me. I didn't even have time to say a word to him. And you? When you show up, you lecture me. They're the ones who made this mess. I grew up with you. I am your childhood friend. You haven't even listened to my explanation, but you're already so sure that I did it. Feng Lianyi laughed bitterly as tears flowed from her eyes. Mistakes. Committing it once is enough. I won't commit it for the second time. Besides, I was in love with Master Nan Xian before. He is the most beautiful and gentle person I've ever seen, but he has given his heart to Maiden Feng. How could I still be a shameless woman to go to him again? Feng Lianqing remained silent, but he did not look as angry as before. Big brother Feng, if you feel that the things I've done before can't be forgiven, I'll just leave. Why do you all have to be so aggressive toward me? It is already like this with Sister Helene. Now it is the same with you. I, Feng Lianyi, still have dignity. How can I live under your suspicious eyes? Don't I have a shred of dignity? Her voice hysterical, and her face was full of anger. Feng Lianqing spoke. I won't ask any more questions about today's matter. Feng Lianyi, I only hope that you can remember my words and don't expect anything of him. I have long seen that Master Nan Xian's eyes are all on Lady Nan. He has no desire to look at other women, and she is no longer a maiden, you have to call her Lady Nan. Feng Lianyi's body stiffened slightly. That name. She could not say it no matter what. But seeing Feng Lianqing's cold face, she reluctantly said, I know. Well, Feng Lianqing's face was cold. Have you gone to Lady Nan to apologize? Feng Lianyi's face was livid as she clenched her fists tightly. No, as expected, Feng Lianqing's face grew colder. What did you promise me? Feng Lianyi was a bit embarrassed, she exhaled slowly and continued, I have no way of going there because she has moved away from the inn. I don't know where she has gone. Oh, Feng Lianqing responded faintly, I've already made inquiries. The waiter said that she has moved to a manor on East Street. I'll tell you her exact location later. You go find her and apologize. Feng Lianyi's fists tightened, her nails dug into her palm. Me for extra chapters. She was silent for a moment before she said, it's already late. I'll go to her tomorrow. When Feng Lianqing looked at the sky, it was indeed already dark, so he did not say anything more. After all, Feng Ruqing still needed to rest, and it was too late to disturb her. I heard Lady Nan has good self-discipline. She will wake up early, so you will go to her first thing in the morning and be sure to apologize before you return. You can't come back until she has forgiven you. All right, Feng Lianyi responded expressionlessly. She lowered her eyes to hide the resentment and anger in them. Feng Lianqing said no more and walked out of Feng Manor. Today. It seemed that he was indeed a bit harsh to Helian Yu. After all, Helian Yu had helped Feng Ruqing, and with Feng Ruqing, he always had an innate fondness for her. Therefore, it was better for him to go to Helian Yu to apologize before that girl reported him to his master. Feng Lianqing smiled bitterly. He was not this distant with Helian Yu back then, but Helian Yu confessed to him and made things awkward. He had only ever treated her like his own sister and bore no other feelings for her. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.